Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Sunday Krishna book reading to Srila Prabhupada, as we do every Sunday here in his sacred room in Vrindavan. There are many programs going on today, many parikramas, many kathas. So we get the blessing of reading Krishna book to Srila Prabhupada today. So as we always do, let us offer our respectful obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Namam Vishnumadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti-vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paskachade Shatarane. And to each other, Vanchakalpadrubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. And just turning off the sound on my phone. So for all of our online readers, we're in chapter 52, Krishna, the rancher. So we read almost till the end last week. So if you go just a couple of pages before the end, you'll see a paragraph that begins with Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna then desired to know about the rulers or Kshatriyas in the Brahmin kingdom. So he inquired whether the citizens of the kingdom were all happy. A king's qualification is judged by the temperament of the people in the kingdom. If they are happy in all respects, it is to be understood that the king is honest and is executing his duties rightly. Krishna said that the king in whose kingdom the citizens are happy is very dear to him. Of course, Krishna could understand that the Brahmin had come with a confidential message. Therefore he said, "If you have no objection, I give you liberty to speak about your mission."
Thus, being very much satisfied by these transcendental pastimes with the Lord, the Brahmana narrated the whole story of his mission in coming to see Krishna. He got out the letter Rukmini had written to Krishna and said, "These are the words of Princess Rukmini. My dear Krishna, O infallible and O most beautiful one, any human being who happens to hear about your transcendental form and pastimes immediately absorbs through his ears your name, fame, and qualities. Thus all his material pangs subside, and he fixes your form in his heart. Through such transcendental love for you, he always sees you within himself, and by this process all his desires are fulfilled. Similarly, I have heard of your transcendental qualities. I may be shameless in expressing myself directly, but you have captivated me and taken my heart. You may doubt my steadiness of character, since how could an unmarried young girl like me approach you without any shame? But my dear Mukunda, you are the supreme lion among human beings, the supreme person among persons. Any girl, though not yet having left her home, or even any women of the highest chastity, would desire to marry you. Being captivated by your unprecedented character, knowledge, opulence, and position, I know that you are the husband of the goddess of fortune, and are very kind towards your devotees. Therefore, I have decided to become your eternal maid servant. My dear Lord, I dedicate my life and soul unto your lotus feet. I have selected your lordship as my husband, and I therefore request you to accept me as your wife. You are the supreme powerful, O lotus-eyed one. Now I belong to you. If that which is enjoyable for the lion to eat is taken away by the jackal, it will be ludicrous affair. Therefore, I request you to immediately take care of me before I am taken away by Shishupal and other princes like him. My dear Lord, in my previous life, I may have done public welfare work like digging wells and planting trees, or pious activities such as performing ritualistic ceremonies and sacrifices and serving superiors like the spiritual master, Brahmanas, and Vaishnavas. By these activities, perhaps I have pleased the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. If this be so, then I wish that you, Lord Krishna, the brother of Lord Balaram, please come here and catch hold of my hand, so that I shall not be touched by Shishupal and his company.
क्या है company? Hare Krishna. Rukmini's marriage with Sisupala was already settled. Therefore, she suggested that Krishna kidnap her so that this might be changed. This sort of marriage, in which the girl is kidnapped by force, is known as Rakshasa and is practiced among Kshatriyas, or men with administrative marital spirit, because her marriage was already arranged to take place the next day. Rukmini suggested that Krishna come here incognito to kidnap her and then fight with Sisupala and his allies like the king of Magadha, knowing that no one could conquer Krishna, who would certainly emerge victorious. She addressed him as Ajita, the unconquerable Lord. Rukmini told Krishna not to be concerned that the fighting would take place within the palace and that many of the family members, including the women, might thus be wounded or even killed. As the king of country thinks of diplomatic ways to achieve his object, Rukmini, being the daughter of a king, was diplomatic in suggesting how this unnecessary and undesirable killing could be avoided. She explained that it was the custom of her family to visit the temple of goddess Durga, their family deity. Before a marriage, the Kshatriya kings were mostly staunch Vaishnavas worshipping Lord Vishnu in either the Radha Krishna or Lakshmi Narayana form. Still, for their material welfare, they used to worship goddess Durga. They never made the mistake, however, of accepting demigods as the supreme lord on the level of Vishnu Tattva, as do some less intelligent men. To avoid the unnecessary killing of the relative, Rukmini suggested that it would be easiest for him to kidnap her while she was either going from the palace to the temple or else returning home.
She also explained to Krishna why she was anxious to marry him, even though her marriage was to take place with Shishupal, who was also qualified, being the son of a great king. Rukmini said that she did not think anyone was greater than Krishna, not even Lord Shiva, who is known as Mahadev, the greatest of all demigods. Lord Shiva also seeks the pleasure of Lord Krishna in order to be delivered from his entanglement in the quality of ignorance within the material world. Although Lord Shiva is the greatest of all great souls, Mahatmas, he keeps on his head the purifying water of the Ganges, which emanates from a hole in this material universe made by the toe of Lord Vishnu. Lord Shiva is in charge of the material quality of ignorance, and to keep himself in a transcendental position, he always meditates on Lord Vishnu or Krishna, and always tries to purify himself with the water of the Ganges. Therefore, Rukmini knew very well that obtaining the favor of Krishna was not easy. Since even Lord Shiva must purify himself for this purpose, surely it would be difficult for Rukmini, who was only the daughter of a Kshatriya king. Thus, she desired to dedicate her life to observing severe austerities and penances, such as fasting and going without bodily comforts. If it were not possible in this lifetime to gain Krishna's favor by these activities, she was prepared to die from such austerities and to undergo similar difficulties lifetime after lifetime. In the Bhagavad-Gita, it is said that pure devotees of the Lord execute devotional service with great determination. Such determination, as exhibited by Rukmini Devi, is the only prize for purchasing Krishna's favor. One should be strongly determined in Krishna consciousness, and that is the way to ultimate success. After relaying Rukmini Devi's statement to Krishna, the Brahmana said, "My dear Krishna, chief of the Yadu dynasty, I have brought this confidential message for you from Rukmini. Now it is placed before you for your consideration. After due deliberation, you may act as you please. But if you want to do something, you must do it immediately. There is not much time left for action." Thus ends the Bhakti-Vedanta purport for the 52nd chapter of Krishna, Krishna the Ranchor.
Chapter 53. Krishna kidnaps Rukmini. After hearing Rukmini's statement, Lord Krishna was very much pleased. He immediately shook hands with the Brahmana and said, "My dear Brahmana, I am very glad to hear that Rukmini is eager to marry me, since I am also eager to get her hand. My mind is always absorbed in thoughts of the daughter of Bhishmaka, and sometimes I cannot sleep at night because I am thinking of her. I can understand that the marriage of Rukmini with Shishupal has been arranged by her elder brother in a spirit of animosity toward me. So I am determined to give a good lesson to all of these princes, just as one extracts and uses fire after manipulating ordinary wood. After dealing with these demoniac princes, I shall bring forth Rukmini like fire from their midst."
Krishna, upon being informed of the specific date of Rukmini's marriage, was anxious to leave immediately. He asked his driver, Daruka, to harness the horses for his chariot and prepared to go to the kingdom of Vidarbha. After hearing his order, the driver bought Krishna's 4 special horses. The names and descriptions of these horses are mentioned in the Padma Puran. The first one, Saibya, was greenish. The second, Sugriva, was greyish, like ice. The third, Meghapushpa, was the color of new cloud. And the last, Balaka, was of ashen color. When the horses were yoked and the chariot was ready to go, Krishna helped the Brahmana up and gave him a seat by his side. Immediately they started from Dwarka and within one night arrived at the province of Vidarbha. The kingdom of Dwarka is situated in the western part of India and Vidarbha is situated in the northern part. They are separated by a distance of not less than 1,000 miles. But the horses were so fast that they reached their destination, a town called Kundina, within one night or at most 12 hours.
King Bhishmaka was not enthusiastic about handing his daughter over to Sisupala, but he was obliged to accept the marriage settlement due to his affectionate attachment for his eldest son, who had negotiated it. As a matter of duty, the king was decorating the city for the marriage ceremony and acting in great earnestness to make it very successful. Water was sprinkled all over the streets and the city was cleansed very nicely. Since India is situated in the tropical zone, the atmosphere is always dry. Dust always accumulates on the streets and roads, so they must be sprinkled with water at least once a day. And in a big cities like Calcutta, twice a day. The roads of the Kundina were arrayed with colored flags and festoons, and gates were constructed at particular crossings. The whole city was decorated very nicely. The beauty of the city was enhanced by the inhabitants, both men and women, who were dressed in fresh, washed clothes and decorated with sandalwood pearls, necklaces, and flower garlands. Incense burned everywhere, and fragrances like aguru scented the air. Priests and brahmanas were sumptuously fed and, according to ritualistic ceremony, were given sufficient wealth and cows in charity. In this way, they were engaged in chanting Vedic hymns. The king's daughter Rukmini was exquisitely beautiful. She was very clean and had beautiful teeth. The auspicious sacred thread was tied on her wrist. She was given various types of jewelry to wear and long silken clothes to cover the upper and lower parts of her body. Learned priests gave her protection by chanting mantras from the Samaveda, Rigveda, Yajurveda. Then they chanted mantras from the Atharva Vedas and offered oblations in the fire to pacify the influence of different stars.
King Bhishmaka was experienced in dealing with brahmanas and priests when such ceremonies were held. He specifically honored the brahmanas by giving them large quantities of gold and silver, grain mixed with molasses, and cows decorated with cloths and ornaments. Damagosh, Shishupal's father, executed all kinds of ritualistic performances to invoke good fortune for his son. Shishupal's father was known as Damagosh due to his superior ability to cut down unregulated citizens. Dama means curbing down and Gosha means famous. So he was famous for controlling the citizens. Damagosh thought that if Krishna came to disturb the marriage ceremony, he would certainly cut him down with his military power. Therefore, after performing the various auspicious ceremonies, Damagosh gathered his military divisions. He took many elephants garlanded with golden necklaces and many similarly decorated chariots and horses. It appeared that Damagosh, along with his son and other companions, was going to Kundina, not exactly to get Shishupal married, but mainly to fight.
When King Bhishmaka learned, when King Bhishma learned that the Damaghosha and his party were arriving, he left the city to receive them. Outside the city gate were many gardens where the guests were welcome to stay. In the Vedic system of marriage, the bride's father arrived the large party of bride's groom and accommodated them in a suitable place of 2 or 3 days until the marriage ceremony is performed. The party, led by Damaghosa, contained thousands of men, among whom the prominent kings and the personalities were Jarasandha, Dantabakra, Viduratha, and Pundaraka. It was an open secret that the Rukmini was meant to be married to Krishna, but that her elder brother Rukmi had arranged her marriage to Shishupal. There was also some whispering among a rumor that the Rukmini had sent a messenger to Krishna. Therefore, the soldiers suspected that the Krishna might cause a disturbance by attempting to kidnap the Rukmini. Even though there was not without a fear, there were all the all prepared to give Krishna a good fight to prevent the girl from being taken away. Sri Balaram received the news that Krishna has left for Kundina, accompanied by a Brahmana, and that the Shishupal was there with a large number of soldiers. Balaram suspected that they would attack Krishna, and thus, out of great affection for his brother, he took strong military division of chariot, infantry, horses, and elephants, and went to the precincts of Kundina.
Meanwhile, inside the palace, Rukmini was expecting Krishna to arrive, but when neither he nor the Brahmana who took her message appeared, she was full of anxiety and began to think how unfortunate she was. There is only one night between today and my marriage day, and still neither the Brahmana nor Shamasundar has returned. I cannot ascertain any reason for this. Having little hope, she thought that perhaps Krishna had found reason to become dissatisfied and had rejected her fair proposal. As a result, the Brahmana might have become disappointed and not come back. Although she was thinking of various causes for the delay, she expected them both at any moment.
Rukmini further thought that demigods such as Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Goddess Durga might have been displeased. It is generally said that the demigods become angry when not properly worshipped. For instance, when Indra found that the inhabitants of Vrindavan were not worshipping him, Krishna having stopped the Indra Yagna, he became angry and wanted to chastise him. Thus Rukmini thought that since she did not worship Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma very much, they might have become angry and tried to frustrate her plan. Similarly, she thought that Goddess Durga, the wife of Lord Shiva, might have taken the side of her husband. Lord Shiva is known as Rudra and his wife is known as Rudrani. Rudrani and Rudra refers to those who are accustomed to putting others in distress to cry forever. Rukmini was thinking of Goddess Durga as Girija, the daughter of the Himalayan mountains. The Himalayan mountains are very cold and harsh, and she thought of Goddess Durga as hard-hearted and cold. In her anxiety to see Krishna, Rukmini, who was after all still a child, thought this way about the different demigods. The gopis worship Goddess Katyayani to get Krishna as their husbands. Similarly, Rukmini was thinking of the various types of demigods, not for material benefit, but in respect to Krishna. Praying to the demigods to achieve the favor of Krishna is not irregular, and Rukmini was fully absorbed in thoughts of Krishna.
Even though she pacified herself by thinking that the time for Govinda to arrive had not yet expired, Rukmini felt that she was hoping against hope, not expressing her mind to anyone. She simply shed tears, unabsorbed by others. When her tears became more forceful, she closed her eyes in helplessness. While Rukmini was in such deep thought, auspicious symptoms appeared in different parts of her body. Trembling began to occur in her left eyelid, arm, and thigh. When trembling occurs in these parts of the body, it is an auspicious sign indicating that something lucrative can be expected.
Just then, Rukmini, full of anxiety, saw the Brahmana messenger. Krishna, being the super soul of all living beings, could understand Rukmini's anxiety. Therefore, he sent the Brahmana inside the palace to let her know that he had arrived. When Rukmini saw the Brahman, she could understand the auspicious trembling of her body and immediately became elated. She smiled and inquired whether Krishna had already come. The Brahmana replied, son of the Yadu dynasty, Sri Krishna, had arrived. He further encouraged her by saying that Krishna had promised to carry her away without fail. Rukmini was so elated by the Brahmana's message that she wanted to give him in charity everything she possessed. However, finding nothing suitable for presentation, she simply offered him her respectful obeisances. The significance of offering respectful obeisances to a superior is that the one offering obeisances is obliged to the respected person. In other words, Rukmini implied that she would remain ever grateful to the Brahmana. Anyone who gets the favor of the goddess of fortune, as did this Brahmana, is without a doubt always happy in material opulence.
When King Bhishmaka heard that Krishna and Balaram had come, he invited them to see the marriage ceremony of his daughter. Immediately he arranged to receive them along with their soldiers in a suitable garden house. As was the Vedic custom, the king offered Krishna and Balaram honey and fresh washed garments. He was hospitable not only to Krishna, Balaram, and kings such as Jarasandha, but also to many other kings and princes according to their personal strength, age, and material possessions. Out of curiosity and eagerness, the people of Kundina assembled before Krishna and Balaram to drink the nectar of their beauty. With tearful eyes, they offered Krishna and Balaram their silent respects. They were very much pleased considering Lord Krishna the suitable match for Rukmini. They were so eager to unite Krishna and Rukmini that they prayed to the personality of Godhead, "Our dear Lord, if we have performed any pious activities with which you are satisfied, kindly be merciful upon us and accept the hand of Rukmini." It appears that Rukmini was a very popular princess, and all the citizens, out of intense love for her, prayed for her best fortune. In the meantime, Rukmini, being very nicely dressed and protected by bodyguards, came out of the palace to visit the temple of Ambika, goddess Durga.
Deity worship in the temple has been in existence since the beginning of Vedic culture. There is a class of men described in the Bhagavad-Gita as Veda Vedarata. They believe only in the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies, but not in the temple worship. Such foolish person may here take note that although this marriage of Krishna and Rukmini took place more than 5,000 years ago, were arrangement of for temple worship. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord says, Yanti Deva Brata Devan. The worship of the demigod attained the adab of the demigods. There were many peoples who worshipped the demigods and many who directly worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The system of demigods worship was directed mainly to Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and Lord Ganesha, the sun god, and goddess Durga. The Lord Shiva and the goddess Durga were worshipped even by royal families, and the minor demigods were worshipped by the silly lower class people. As far as the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas are concerned, they simply worship Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita, the worship of demigods is condemned but not forbidden. There it is certainly stated that less intelligent men worship the demigods for material benefit. On the other hand, even though Rukmini was the goddess of fortune, she went to the temple of goddess Durga because the family deity were worshipped there. In Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that the Rukmini proceed towards the temple of goddess Durga. Within her heart, she always thought of lotus feet of Krishna. Therefore, when Rukmini went to the temple, it is not with the intention of an ordinary person who goes to beg for the material benefit. Her only goal was Krishna.
As Rukmini proceeded toward the temple, she was silent and grave. Her mother and her girlfriends were by her side, and the wife of a Brahmana was in the center. Surrounding her were royal bodyguards. This custom of a would-be bride's going to the temple of a demigod is still practiced in India. As the procession continued, various musical sounds were heard. Conch shells, drums such as panavas, and bugles of different sizes such as turiyas and berries combined to make a sound which was not only auspicious but very sweet to hear. Thousands of wives of respectable brahmanas were present, all dressed very nicely with suitable ornaments. They presented Rukmini with flower garlands, sandalwood pulp, and a variety of colorful garments to assist her in worshiping Lord Shiva and Goddess Durga. Some of these ladies were very old and knew perfectly well how to chant prayers to Goddess Durga and Lord Shiva. So, followed by Rukmini and others, they led these prayers before the deity.
Rukmini offered her prayers to the deity by saying, "My dear goddess Durga, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you as well as to your children. Goddess Durga has 4 famous children, 2 daughters, the goddess of fortune Lakshmi and the goddess of learning Saraswati, and 2 sons, Lord Ganesh and Lord Kartikeya. They are all considered demigods and goddesses. Since Goddess Durga is always worshipped with her famous children, Rukmini especially offered her respectful obeisances to the deity in that way. However, her prayers were special. Ordinary people pray to Goddess Durga for material wealth, fame, profits, strength, and so on. Rukmini, however, desired to have Krishna for her husband and therefore prayed that the deity be pleased with her and blessed her with that benediction. Since she desired only Krishna, her worship of the demigods is not condemned. While Rukmini was praying, she presented a variety of items before the deity, chief of which were water, different kinds of flames, incense, garments, garlands, and various food prepared with ghee, such as puris and kachoris. She was offered fruits, sugarcane, betel nuts, and spices. With great devotion, Rukmini offered them to the deity according to the regulative principles directed by the old Brahmana ladies. After this ritualistic ceremony, the ladies offered the remnants of the food to Rukmini as prasadam, which she accepted with great respect. Then Rukmini offered her obeisances to the ladies and to Goddess Durga. After the business of deity worship was finished, Rukmini caught hold of the hands of one of her girlfriends in her own hand, which was decorated with a jewel ring, and left the temple in the company of others.
All the princes and visitors who came to Kundina for the marriage had assembled outside the temple to see Rukmini. The princes were especially eager to see her because they all actually thought that they would have Rukmini as their wife. Struck with wonder upon seeing Rukmini, they thought she was especially manufactured by the Creator to to bewilder all the great chivalrous princes. Her body was well constructed, the middle portion being thin. Her high hips were adorned with a jeweled locket. She had pink lips, and the beauty of her face was enhanced by her slightly scattered hair and by different kinds of earrings. The bodily luster and beauty of Rukmini appeared as if painted by an artist, perfectly presenting beauty following the descriptions of great poets. Rukmini's breasts are described as being somewhat high, indicating that she was just a youth, not more than 13 or 14 years old. Her beauty was especially intended to attract the attention of Krishna. Although the princess gazed upon her beautiful features, she was not at all proud. Her eyes moved restlessly, and when she smiled very simply, like an innocent girl, her teeth appeared just like jasmine buds. Expecting Krishna to take her away at any moment, she proceeded slowly toward her home. Her legs moved just like a full grown swan, and her ankle bells tinkled mildly.
The chivalrous princes assembled there were so overwhelmed by Rukmini's beauty that they became almost unconscious and fell from their horses and elephants. Full of lust, they hopelessly desired Rukmini's hand. Comparing their own beauties to hers, Srimati Rukmini, however, was not interested in any of them. In her heart, she was simply expecting Krishna to come and carry her away. And she was adjusting the ornaments on a finger of her left hand. She happened to look upon the princess and suddenly saw that Krishna was present amongst them. Although Rukmini had never before seen Krishna, she was always thinking of him. Thus, she had no difficulty recognizing him amongst the princely order. Krishna, unconcerned with the other princes, immediately took the opportunity to place Rukmini on her chariot, marked by a flag bearing an image of Garuda. He then proceeded slowly, without fear, taking Rukmini away exactly as a lion takes a deer from the midst of jackals. Meanwhile, Balaram appeared on the scene and with the soldiers of the Yadu dynasty. Jarasandha, who had many times experienced defeat by Krishna, roared, "How is this? Krishna is taking Rukmini away from us without opposition. What is the use of our chivalrous fighters with arrows? My dear princess, just look, who are losing our reputation. He just like a jackal taking booty from a lion." Thus ends the Bhakti-Vedanta purport of the 53rd chapter of Krishna. Krishna kidnaps Rukmini.
Chapter 54. Krishna defeats all the princes and takes Rukmini home to Dwarka. Jarasandha and all the other princes were very angry at Krishna for having kidnapped Rukmini. Struck by Rukmini's beauty, they had fallen from the backs of their horses and elephants, but now they began to stand up and properly arm themselves. Picking up their bows and arrows, they began to chase Krishna on their chariots, horses, and elephants. To check their progress, the soldiers of the Yadu dynasty turned and faced them. Thus, terrible fighting began between the two belligerent groups. The princes opposing Krishna, who were led by Jarasandha and were all expert in fighting, shot their arrows at the Yadu soldiers just as a cloud splashes the face of a mountain with torrents of rain. Gathered on the face of a mountain, a cloud does not move very much, and therefore the force of rain is much more severe on a mountain than anywhere else.
The opposing princes were determined to defeat Krishna and recapture Rukmini from his custody, and they fought with him as severely as possible. Rukmini, seated by the side of Krishna, and saw the arrows raining from the opposing party unto the face of Yadu soldiers. In the fearful attitude, she looked upon the Krishna's face, expressing her gratefulness that he had taken such a great risk for her sake only. Her eyes moving, she appeared sorry, and Krishna, who could immediately understand her mind, encouraged her with these words: My dear Rukmini, do not worry. Please rest assured that the soldiers of Yadu dynasty will kill the opposing soldiers without delay.
As Krishna was speaking with Rukmini, the commanders of the Yadu dynasty soldiers, headed by Lord Balaram, who is also known as Sankarshan, as well as by Gada, not tolerating the defiant attitude of the opposing soldiers, began to strike their horses, elephants, and chariots with arrows. As the fighting progressed, the princes and soldiers of the enemy began to fall from their horses, elephants, and chariots. Within a short time, millions of severed heads, decorated with helmets and earrings, had fallen on the battlefield. The soldiers' hands were severed along with their bows and arrows and clubs. Arms were piled upon arms, thighs upon thighs, and horses upon horses. Similarly, other animals such as camels, elephants, and asses, as well as infantry soldiers, all fell with severed heads.
When the enemy, headed by Jarasandh, found that they were gradually being defeated by the soldiers of Krishna, they thought it unwise to risk losing their armies in the battle for the sake of Shishupal. Shishupal himself should have fought to rescue Rukmini from the hands of Krishna. But when the soldiers saw that Shishupal was not competent to fight with Krishna, they decided not to lose their armies unnecessarily. Therefore, they ceased fighting and dispersed. Some of the princes, as a matter of etiquette, appeared before Shishupal. They saw that Shishupal was discouraged, like one who has lost his wife. His face appeared dried up, he had lost all his energy, and all the luster of his body had disappeared. They addressed Shishupal thus: Our dear Shishupal, don't be discouraged in this way. You belong to the royal order and are the chief amongst the fighters. There is no question of distress or happiness for a person like you, because neither of these conditions is everlasting. Take courage. Don't be disappointed by this temporary reversal. After all, we are not the final actors. As puppets dance in the hands of a magician, we are all dancing by the will of the Supreme, and according to his plan alone we suffer distress or enjoy happiness. We should therefore be equipoised in all circumstances.
Although in the beginning the princes had been full of hope for success in their heroic action, after their defeat they could only try to encourage Sisupala with flattering words. Thus Sisupala, instead of marrying Rukmini, had to be satisfied with the flattering words of his friends, and he returned home in disappointment. The kings who had come to assist him, also disappointed, then returned to their respective kingdoms. The whole catastrophe of the defeat was due to the envious nature of Rukmini's elder brother Rukmi. Having seen his sister forcibly taken away by Krishna after he had planned to marry her to Sisupala, Rukmini was frustrated. So, after Sisupala, his friends and intended brother-in-law returned home, Rukmi, very much agitated, was determined to teach Krishna a lesson personally. He called for his own soldiers, a military ranks consisting of several thousand elephant, horses, chariots, and infantry, and equipped with this military strength, he began to follow Krishna to Dwaraka. To show his prestige, Rukmini promised all the returning kings, "You could not help Sisupala marry my sister Rukmini, but I cannot allow Rukmini to be taken away by Krishna. I shall teach him a lesson. Now I am going to follow him." He presented himself as a big commander and vowed before all the princes, "Unless I kill Krishna in the fight and bring back my sister from these clutches I shall not return to my capital city, Kundina. I make this vow before you all, and you will see that I shall fulfill it. After thus vibrating all these boasting words, Rukmi immediately got on his chariot and told his chariot driver to pursue Krishna. He said, I want to fight him immediately. This cowherd boy has become proud of his tricky way of fighting with Kshatriya. But today I shall teach him a good lesson, because he had the impudence to kidnap my sister. I, with my sharp arrow, shall teach him very good lesson indeed. Thus this unintelligent man Rukmi, ignored of the extent of the strength of activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, voiced his impudent threats.
In great stupidity, he soon stood before Krishna, telling him repeatedly, "Stop for a minute and fight with me." After saying this, he drew his bow and directly shot 3 forceful arrows against Krishna's body. Then he condemned Krishna as the most abominable descendant of the Yadu dynasty and asked him to stand before him for a minute so that he could teach him a good lesson. "You are carrying away my sister just like a crow, stealing clarified butter meant for use in a sacrifice. You are proud of your military strength, but you cannot fight according to regulative principles. You have stolen my sister. Now I shall relieve you of your false prestige. You can keep my sister in your possession only until I beat you to the ground for good with my arrows."
Lord Krishna, after hearing all the crazy words from Rukmi, immediately shot an arrow and severed the string of Rukmi's bow. Making him unable to use another arrow, Rukmi immediately took another bow and shot another 5 arrows at Krishna. Being attacked for a second time, Krishna again severed Rukmi's bowstring. Rukmi took a third bow, and Krishna again cut its string. This time, to teach the Rukmi a lesson, Krishna shot 6 arrows at him, and then shot another 8 arrows, killing 4 horses with 4 arrows, and killing the chariot driver with another arrows, and chopping off the upper portion of Rukmi's chariot, including the flag with the remaining 3 arrows.
Rukmi, having run out of arrows, took assistance from swords, shields, tridents, lances, and similar weapons used for fighting hand to hand. But Krishna immediately broke them all in the same way. Being repeatedly baffled in his attempts, Rukmi took his sword and ran swiftly toward Krishna, just as a fly proceeds toward a fire. But as soon as Rukmi reached Krishna, Krishna cut his weapon to pieces. This time Krishna took out his sharp sword and was about to kill him immediately. But Rukmi's sister Rukmini, understanding that this time Krishna would not excuse her brother, fell down at Krishna's lotus feet and in a very grievous tone, trembling with great fear, began to plead with her husband.
Rukmini first addressed Krishna as Yogeshwara. Yogeshwara means one who is possessed of inconceivable opulence and energy. Krishna possesses inconceivable opulence and energy, whereas Rukmini's brother had only limited military potency. Krishna is immeasurable, whereas her brother was measured in every step of his life. Therefore, Rukmini was not comparable even to an insignificant insect before the unlimited power of Krishna. She also addressed Krishna as the God of the gods. There are many powerful demigods, such as Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Indra, Chandra, and Varuna. But Krishna is the Lord of all these gods, whereas Rukmini's brother was not only an ordinary human being, but in fact the lowest of all because he had no understanding of Krishna. In other words, a human being has no conception of the actual position of Krishna is the lowest in human society. Then Rukmini addressed Krishna as Mahabhuja, which means one with unlimited strength. She also addressed him, Krishna, as Jagatpati, the master of the whole cosmic manifestation. In comparison, her brother was only an ordinary prince.
In this way, Rukmini compared the position of Rukmi with that of Krishna and very feelingly pleaded with her husband not to kill her brother just as the auspicious time of her being united with Krishna, but to excuse him. In other words, she displayed her real position as a woman. She was happy to get Krishna as her husband at the moment when her marriage to another was to be performed. But she did not want it to be at the loss of her elder brother, who after all loved his younger sister and wanted to hand her over to one who, according to his own calculations, was a better man. While Rukmini was praying to Krishna for the life of her brother, her whole body trembled, and because of her anxiety, her face appeared to dry up, and her throat became choked. And due to her trembling, the ornaments on her body loosened and fell scattered on the ground. In this manner, when Rukmini was very much perturbed, she fell down on the ground, and Lord Krishna immediately became compassionate and agreed not to kill the foolish Rukmi. But at the same time, he wanted to give him some light punishment. So he tied him up with a piece of cloth and snipped at his mustache, beard, and hair, keeping some spots here and there.
While Krishna was dealing with Rukmini in this way, the soldiers of the Yadu dynasty, commanded by Balaram himself, broke the whole strength of Rukmi army, just an elephant in a pond discards the feeble stem of lotus flower. In other words, as an elephant breaks the whole construction of a lotus flower while bathing in reservoir of water, the military strength of Yadu broke up Rukmi's forces. When the commanders of the Yadu dynasty came back to see Krishna, they were all surprised to see the condition of Rukmi. Lord Krishna became especially compassionate. Lord Balaram became especially compassionate toward his sister-in-law who was newly married to his brother. To please Rukmini's Balaram personally united Rukmi and further please her. Balaram, as her elder brother of Krishna, spoke some words of chastisement. Krishna, your action is not at all satisfactory. He said, this is an abomination very much contrary to our family tradition. To cut someone's hair and shave his mustache and beard is almost comparable to killing him. Whatever Rukmi might have been, he is now our brother-in-law, a relative of our family, and you should not have put him in such a condition.
After this, to pacify Rukmini, Lord Balaram said to her, "You should not be sorry that your brother has been made odd-looking. Everyone suffers or enjoys the results of his own actions." Lord Balaram wanted to impress upon Rukmini that she should not be sorry for the consequences her brother suffered due to his actions. There was no need of being too affectionate toward such a brother. Lord Balaram again turned toward Krishna and said, "My dear Krishna, a relative, even though he commits such a blunder and deserves to be killed, should be excused. For when such a relative is conscious of his own fault, That consciousness itself is like death. Therefore, there is no need to kill him.
Balarama again turned towards Rukmini and informed her that the current duty of Kshatriyas in the human society is to fix that, according to the principle of fighting, one's own brother may become an enemy. Then a Kshatriya does not hesitate to kill his own brother. In other words, the Lord Balaram wanted to instruct the Rukmini that the Rukmi and the Krishna were right in not saving the mercy to each other in the fighting, despite the family consideration that they happened to be a brother-in-law. Sri Balaram informed Rukmini that the Kshatriyas are typical emblems of the materialistic way of life. They become puffed up whenever there is a question of material acquisition. Therefore, when there is a fighting between two belligerent Kshatriyas of kingdom, land and wealth and omen and prestige or the power, they try to put another into the most abominable condition. Balaram instructs the Rukmini that her affection towards her brother Rukmi, who had created the enmity with so many persons, as a perverse conditions befitting an ordinary materialistic. Her brother characters was not at all admirable, considering his treatment of his friend. And yet Rukmini, like an ordinary woman, was affectionate towards him. He was not fit to be her brother, and still Rukmini was lenient towards him.
Besides that, Balaram continued, the consideration that a person is neutral or is one's friend or enemy is generally made by persons in the bodily concept of life. Such foolish persons are bewildered by the illusory energy of the Supreme Lord. The spirit soul is of the same pure quality in any embodiment of matter, but those who are not sufficiently intelligent see only the bodily differences between animals and men, literates and illiterates, rich and poor, which cover the pure spirit soul. Such differences, observed merely on the basis of the body, are exactly like the differences between fires in terms of the various types of fuel they consume. Whatever the size and shape of the fuel, there is no such variety of size and shape in the fire which comes out. Similarly, in the sky, there are no differences in size or shape.
In this way, Balaram reconciled the situation by his moral and ethical instructions to Rukmini and Krishna. To Rukmini, he stated further, this body is part of the material manifestation, consisting of the material elements, living conditions, and interaction of the modes of material nature. The living entity or spirit soul, being in contact with these, is transmigrating from one body to another due to illusory enjoyment, and that transmigration is known as material existence. This contact of the living entity with the material manifestation has neither integration nor disintegration. My dear chaste sister-in-law, the spirit soul is, of course, the cause of this material body, just as the sun is the cause of sunlight, eyesight, and the forms of material manifestation. The example of the sunshine and the material manifestation is very, very appropriate in understanding the living entity's contact with the material world. In the morning, the sun rises, and the heat and light gradually expand throughout the whole day. The sun is the cause of all material shapes and forms, for it is due to the sun that integration and disintegration of material elements take place. But as soon as the sun sets, the whole manifestation is no longer connected to the sun, which has passed from one place to another. When the sun passes from the eastern to the western hemisphere, the results of the interaction due to the sunshine in the eastern hemisphere remains, but the sunshine itself is visible in the western hemisphere. Similarly, the living entity accepts or produces different bodies and different bodily relationships in a particular circumstance. But as soon as he gives up the present body and accepts another, he has nothing to do with the former body. Similarly, the living entity has nothing to do with the next body he accepts. He always free from the contact of his bodily contamination. Therefore, continued Balarama, the appearance and disappearance of the body have nothing to do with the living entity, just as the waxing and waning of the moon have nothing to do with the moon. When the moon waxes, we falsely think that the moon is developing, and when it wanes, we think the moon is decreasing. Factually, the moon, as it is always the same. It has nothing to do with such visible activities of waxing and waning.
Lord Balram continued, one's consciousness in material existence can be compared to sleeping and dreaming. When a man sleeps, he dreams of many non-factual happenings, and as a result of dreaming, he becomes subject to different kinds of distress and happiness. Similarly, when a person is in the dream of material consciousness, he suffers the effects of accepting a body and giving it up again in material existence. Opposite to this material consciousness is Krishna consciousness. In other words, when a man is elevated to the platform of Krishna consciousness, he becomes free from this false conception of life.
In this way, Sri Balaram instructed Rukmini in spiritual knowledge. He further addressed his sister-in-law thus, sweet smiling Rukmini, do not be aggrieved by false notions caused by ignorance. Only because of false notions does one become unhappy. But one can immediately remove this unhappiness by discussing the philosophy of actual life. Be happy on that platform only.
After hearing such enlightening instructions from Sri Balaram, Rukmini immediately became pacified and happy and adjusted her mind, which was very much afflicted by the degraded position of her brother Rukmi. As far as Rukmi was concerned, his promise was not fulfilled, nor was his mission successful. He had come from home with his soldiers and military phalanx to defeat Krishna and release his sister, but on the contrary, he lost all his soldiers and military strength. He was personally degraded and very sorry, but by the grace of the Lord, he could continue his life to its fixed destination. Because he was a Kshatriya, he could remember his promise that he would not return to his capital city, Kundina. Without killing Krishna and releasing his sister, which he had failed to do, therefore he decided in anger not to return to his capital city, and he constructed a small cottage in the village known as Bhojakata, where he resided for the rest of his life.
After defeating all the opposing elements and forcefully carrying away Rukmini, Krishna brought her to his capital city, Dwarka, and then married her according to the Vedic ritualistic principle. After this marriage, Krishna became the king of the Yadus at Dwarka. On the occasion of his marriage with Rukmini, all the inhabitants were happy, and in every house there were great ceremonies. The inhabitants of Dwarka city were so much pleased that they were dressed themselves with the nicest possible ornaments and the garments, and went to present gifts according to their means to the newly married couple, Krishna and Rukmini. All the houses of Yadupuri, Dwarka, were decorated with flags, festoons, and flowers. Each and every house had an extra gate specifically prepared for this occasion. On both the sides of the gates were big water jugs filled with water. The whole city was made fragrant by the burning of fine incense, and at night there was illumination of thousands of lamps which decorated every building.
The entire city appeared jubilant on the occasion of Lord Krishna's marriage with Rukmini. Everywhere in the city there were profuse decorations of banana trees and betel nut trees. These two trees are considered very auspicious in happy ceremonies. At the same time, there was an assembly of many elephants who carried the respective kings of different friendly kingdoms. It is the habit of the elephant that whenever he sees some small plants and trees, out of his sportive and frivolous nature, he uproots the trees and throws them hither and thither. The elephants assembled on this occasion also scattered the banana and betel nut trees, but in spite of such intoxicated action, the whole city, with the trees thrown here and there, looked very nice. The friendly kings of the Kurus and the Pandavas were represented by Bhishma, Dhritarashtra, the 5 Pandava brothers, King Drupad, King Santardana, and Rukmini's father, Bhishmak. Because of Krishna's kidnapping Rukmini, there was initially some misunderstanding between the two families, but Bhishmak, king of Vidarbha, being approached by Sri Balaram and persuaded by many saintly persons, was induced to participate in the marriage ceremony of Krishna and Rukmini. Although the incident of the kidnapping was not a very happy occurrence in the kingdom of Vidarbha, kidnapping was not an unusual affair among Kshatriyas. Kidnapping was, in fact, current in almost all their marriages. Anyway, King Bhishmak was from the very beginning inclined to hand over his beautiful daughter to Krishna. In one way or another, his purpose had been served, and so he was pleased to join the marriage ceremony, even though his eldest son was degraded in the fight. It is mentioned in the Padma Purana that Maharaj Nanda and the cowherd boys of Vrindavan joined the marriage ceremony. Kings from the kingdoms of Kuru, Shinjai, Kekai, Vidarbha, and Kunti all came to Dwarka on this occasion and met with one another very joyfully.
The story of Rukmini's being kidnapped by Krishna was poeticized, and professional readers recited it everywhere. All the assembled kings and their daughters especially were struck with wonder and very much pleased upon hearing the chivalrous activities of Krishna. In this way, all the visitors as well as the inhabitants of Dwarka city were joyful to see Krishna and Rukmini together. In other words, the goddess of fortune was now united with the Supreme Lord, the maintainer of everyone, and thus all the people felt extremely jubilant. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 54th chapter of Krishna. Krishna defeats all the princes and takes Rukmini home to Dwarka. Haribol! So, Srila Prabhupada, thank you very much for allowing us to come and read your Krishna book to you. And this concludes our 1 hour of reading here in your most sacred room in Vrindavan. So as we always do, let us offer our respectful obeisances to Srila Prabhupada and to each other. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Paskacha Deshatarane. And to each other, Vanchakalpa Durubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Bhavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Jai Krishna Book, Shri Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Hari Bol.